Hello everyone, welcome to What's Happening in Brazil. Let's start our show with the latest news from the country.
Milton Ribeiro, the fourth minister to resign from the Ministry of Education, gave up the post on March 28th after the publication by the Brazilian press of accusations of corruption in the ministry. According to the accusations, two evangelical pastors that don't have official government posts have supposedly intermediated the transfer of federal resources to cities. In audio made public by the press, Ribeiro says that he transferred funds to cities indicated by the pastors at the request of President Jair Bolsonaro. At least 10 mayors reported the pastors' lobbyist actions. In some cases, they said that bribes were charged in cash and gold bars. The release of funds for education would also involve the purchase of Bibles printed by the printer owned by one of the pastors. On March 24th, 4 days before the minister's resignation, Bolsonaro stated during his weekly live stream on Facebook that he could put his face on fire for Milton, an informal way Brazilians use to declare having complete trust in someone. In just 1 week, nearly 100,000 voter registration cards were issued to young people between 15 and 18 years old. Under Brazilian law, voting is optional for teenagers between 16 and 18. Only after this age does voting become mandatory. The recent registrations occurred between March 14th and 18th when the Superior Electoral Court campaigned to stimulate teenagers to vote. However, the actions are not limited to official campaigns. Using social media platforms, well-known artists also stimulated young people to get a voter registration card. Singer Anitta, who hit number 1 on the Spotify Global Chart on March 25th, went to Twitter to explain to teenagers step by step how to get a voter registration card. In another tweet, she said she will only take pictures with people over 16 who have a voter registration card. According to recent polls, former President Lula is preferred by 51% of those up to 24 years old.
War in Ukraine made the wheat price skyrocket around the world because Russia is the main exporter of this commodity and Ukraine is the fourth one. In Brazil, consumers and bakery owners are dealing with its effects.
Depending on the country's region, it is called differently: French bread, salty bread, thick dough bread. But whatever the name, the fact is that bread is part of Brazilians' eating habits.
In my house, we eat bread at least twice a day, in the morning and afternoon. Bread represents the first charge of energy for us. We begin by taking coffee and eating bread, then we are ready to face the day.
The problem is that the price of bread in the bakeries skyrocketed. According to the Union of Bakery and Confectionery Industry, in the city of Fortaleza, the price of a kilo of bread tends to reach 20 reais, which is more than $4. In neighborhoods where people buy loaves of bread instead of kilos of bread, the rise was also visible, reaching up to 100%.
We used to pay 25 cents for a loaf of bread, then 30 cents, 50 cents, and I heard that the next time I go to the bakery, a loaf of bread is going to be 60 cents each. Either you reduce the amount of bread you eat, or you reduce the consumption of other basic items in order to buy bread.
The rise in wheat prices follows an international trend driven by the war between Russia and Ukraine. Together, the two countries export about 30% of the wheat consumed worldwide. Even being quite distant, the war affects the lives of ordinary citizens in Brazil. Carla Alencar produces artisan bread and has following with concern the scenario around her main ingredient.
The fact is that the rise in the price of wheat had a strong impact on my bakery costs. The fixed costs don't change, but the variable costs are changing a lot and affecting my bakery's general costs, so it's difficult to maintain it, especially for someone like me, who produces handmade bread.
Her bakery has been using creativity in an attempt to maintain the price of its products.
Eu ainda não repassei esse valor para a cliente.
I still didn't pass on the rising prices to the customers. Since 2013, I have been charging the same prices, and unfortunately, I don't see how not to pass them on to the customers. But so far, I'm trying to be even more creative, working even more on the main feature of my bakery, which is the regional aspect. So there are regional ingredients that I can add to my products to reduce a bit the dependence on wheat.
A solace to cultural workers in Brazil. Recently, two laws that guarantee funds to this sector were approved by the Congress. This can possibly be a turning point for one of the most affected areas during these 2 years of the pandemic.
The approval of the Paulo Gustavo Law by the Senate on March 15th is good news for about 5 million cultural workers scattered around the country. The bill was proposed by Senator Paulo Rocha from the Workers' Party. It honors Brazilian actor and comedian Paulo Gustavo, who died in May 2020 due to COVID-19. It allocates 3.8 billion reais of federal funds to states and cities to apply to cultural projects.
Brazilian artists have to look to the Senate more comprehensible way, since we are responding to this exact moment their country is experiencing, and the cultural sector has a fundamental role.
Besides Paulo Gustavo Law, which favors the allocation of funds to the audiovisual sector, such as cinema and television, another law was also approved by the Senate. Aldir Blanc II, which reissues the first version of the law from 2020, changing from an emergency measure to a permanent one, allocating 3 billion reais in funds. Jandira Fegali, from the Communist Party of Brazil, was the bill's author. Both bills still need to be approved by the president.
Houve acordo na Câmara do não veto.
I hope the government approves the bills so that we don't have a new mobilization to overturn the vetoes. We expect them to be implemented because then we will have Paulo Gustavo as an emergency measure in 2022, and from 2023 onwards, the Aldir Blanc law will permanently apply to the Brazilian culture.
The relief is probably coming, but after very difficult years. Since ascending to power, the ideological wing of Jair Bolsonaro's government has carried out a crusade against the country's cultural scene, a sector that reached 170 billion reais in 2018, something between 1% and 4% of the national GDP.
Eles só se mexeram quando eles viram que
They just took measures when they saw that people were losing their houses, went to live under the bridge, had no money to buy food. I myself, when I realized I had no money and where to get resources, I made cakes and sweets to make ends meet because otherwise I would run out of money to buy food.
In March 2021, the Special Secretariat of Culture, under the rule of actor Mário Frias, even vetoed funds to cities that had imposed lockdowns. Recently, Frias campaigned against the new laws.
Ou seja, a cultura não é nada para esse governo.
Culture means nothing to this government. By the way, to this government, culture is an enemy. The Special Secretary of Culture does everything he can to destroy what we built.
Have you heard about non-conventional food plants? Check out a recipe using a very different ingredient.
A receita de hoje.
Today's recipe is made with this leaf here, a non-conventional food plant. Did you know that when we stop consuming some types of foods and ingredients, they can go extinct? That's why there are initiatives to rescue these tasty foods that we forgot about, initiatives that try to bring them back to our kitchens. The plants I have collected in my garden make part of some of these initiatives. They are the non-conventional food plants. This leaf here, which looks like a big and fat sage plant or a rabbit's ear, depending on who is looking at it, it's known in Brazil as goldfish from the garden. You can fry it in batter and it is going to taste like fried eggplant. Whisk the eggs seasoned with a pinch of salt and black pepper. A thing that makes a lot of difference in fried food is to season the eggs and breadcrumbs before coating the leaves with them. The crust will be dressed, salty and tasty. If you want to add another type of pepper besides black pepper, add dried hot pepper flakes to the breadcrumbs. For deep frying, always use plenty of oil to coat all the food you're gonna fry. It guarantees it will be crunchy. Coat the leaves with the eggs and then with the breadcrumbs. Fry them until they are golden on both sides. The oil must be hot, but not too hot. Drain them. You can serve it plain or with whatever sauce you choose. I'm gonna serve it with chili milk mayonnaise.
Did you like the show? So hit the like button and share with your friends. Don't forget to subscribe to our channel to receive notifications. We'll see you next week.